Hello, I'm afraid this week for Anne and Nick can't be with me. He's had to go back to work at the BBC. So I thought instead I'd bring you a touch of the wonderful outdoors, particularly as it's such a fantastic June afternoon. And I thought I'd bring you somewhere really, really special to me. In fact, yes, it's the beautiful countryside, and yes, it's a wonderful, wonderful blue sky. And look, this is the home of a great friend of mine, actually. It's Highclere Castle, the real Downton Abbey, and I want you to meet Lady Carnarvon, Lady C, otherwise known as Fiona.
Lady Carnarvon, Fiona, it's lovely to see you.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to see you, albeit through a screen.
I know, it's a shame, but where are you now? What room are you in?
Well, I'm sitting in the drawing room, which I suspect millions of viewers and fans of Downton Abbey would recognise. And it's got a wonderful fireplace to one side against which Hugh Bonneville or Lord Grantham often leant.
Yeah.
There were so many scenes that Julian Fellowes set in this room with Maggie Smith, Elizabeth McGovern, but we also use it, as you know, for drinks, for cocktail parties. And, I'm determined when this is all over, Anne, that to continue to gather friends together for laughter and cocktails and fun and dinner and the babble of conversation, which I think we've all realised how much we've missed.
Oh, absolutely. I just wonder, well, you mentioned Downton Abbey there, so I'll have to go first with that. The rumours are so strong that they're nearly fact, aren't they, that there is probably going to be another Downton Abbey movie?
I think there are very strong rumours, and and more members of the cast keep popping up saying things. They sort of trail it, and I watch them trailing it, and I think it would be a really, really well received. And I think Highclere and Downton act as an anchor and a point of reassurance in what has been quite a challenging world.
That's great word for it, anchor, actually. Managing a castle, making it pay for itself in the 21st century, it's not like the old days. I mean, that was always a challenge anyway. But recently, in this year, it must have been incredible for you. I can't even imagine what it must have been like for you. The idea of having a castle to manage, to make pay for itself, to have a future as well as a past when there's a pandemic going on.
I think it's catastrophic for so many people, for so many businesses, including ourselves. So, I want to say we're not the only ones. They have been incredibly tough times, but we're about visitors stepping across that threshold, and that's the one thing we can't do, and that's where we get our money from. Sadly, we don't gain any royalties from Downton Abbey. We actually welcome each visitor, or I write books or whatever else. And it was so scary. I remember just looking and thinking, there's zero money coming today, and yet for every other business, there's inevitably outgoings. And you look gingerly around to see where there's your next leak, which obviously thank God the weather was quite dry. So
going around with buckets.
No, but it was silly things like there was a ball cock broke on the top water tank on the castle roof, and then of course you can't get the plumbers, and they anyway can't get the parts. They're allowed to do emergency. Oh my God! Anyway, and so it goes on. I just think it struck me. I think the immensity of it has struck me, Anne, and sometimes it's felt very lonely and very overwhelming. And then after that, you have to pick yourself up, make a plan, make a strategy, and put one foot in front of the other. And that's how we all get through it.
Absolutely. And mind you, this castle has seen other crises in its time, hasn't it? So I suppose, rather like other countesses before you, you've had to step up to the mark.
Yes, no, you're completely right. And the first book I wrote was about Almina, the fifth countess. And she turned this castle into a hospital throughout the First World War. Mm-hmm. And you step forward into that. And of course, everyone thought in August the war would be over by Christmas. And luckily, they didn't have a crystal ball to know the horrors would carry on until 1918. And she carried on throughout that time. And it must have, again, been very hard because they couldn't have seen the horizon, just the destruction. And in some ways, that's what I've missed, Anne. I've been talking to some other girlfriends and I can't see a horizon.
Yes. Yes, we don't know when this is going to end or how it's going to end. People talk about there being a new norm. What the heck is that meant to mean? And for you, you must be thinking, where are we going to be in a year's time? What's this place going to look like? Is it going to be thronging, as it always has been? You've always had events going on. Or is it going to be quiet because we suffer a second wave? God forbid. But it's interesting you talk about Almina there, because I read your book about Almina, and she is such a fascinating person. But didn't she design the very room that you're sitting in?
She did. So the wall hangings and the curtains were given to her as a wedding present by her father, Alfred de Rothschild. So he gave her the green silk wall hangings. They're based actually on a room in Versailles. And, you know, the Rothschilds were great French collectors of all things beautiful and some French antique furniture. So this is her room. And she did so much.
The astonishing thing about her is that, yes, you say she's a Rothschild, but she wasn't a legitimate Rothschild. She had the most incredible story. She was the illegitimate daughter of one of the Rothschild family.
Yes, of Alfred de Rothschild. And there was a wedding contract, and I've actually now got the original wedding contract, was between Alfred de Rothschild, Almina, and the 5th Earl of Carnarvon. And it was executed a month after the wedding, presumably in case it all went very badly wrong. Yes. So it's an extraordinary document. Actually, I can send you some photocopies of it, which might be of interest.
Yes. And because her father, though, even though he was her illegitimate father, as it were, he stood by her. He made sure she was educated. He even got her presented at court.
He did. I mean, I began Almina, as you know, standing on the steps of St. Margaret's, Westminster, when she was about to get married to the 5th Earl in June 1895. And I found it completely fascinating, because on one side were the Marlboroughs and the Carnarvons and the titled aristocratic family. On the other side were the equally extraordinary families, the Sassoons, the Efrosis, the Rothschilds. So it was accepted, and they kind of worked out how to do it very charmingly, and everybody knew about it, and nobody made a scene about it. It was extraordinary. So that's where I began wondering what it would be like to be in her shoes, and the extraordinary over-the-top decorations. You know, that her father spared nothing for his daughter. He gave her a wonderful father to have, everything she wanted.
I mean, he might have brushed her to one side, as so many did in those days, but he stood by her. And isn't that one of the reasons that Highclere Castle sort of got a very early form of central heating or something?
Yes, you know, if there's any reason George and I are still here, it's because of Almina, an extraordinary woman, not very tall, full of energy. And she loved engineering and heating and electricity. When I wrote the book Almina, I thought, oh, golly, well, not sure I'm that interested in that. I prefer curtains and pretty soft things. And actually, I'm now completely fascinated.
She went
plumbing and heating and the water tanks on the roof. And I can tell you about, you know, the electricians and plumbers are my best friends.
And what an amazing couple they were, because although he was a lot older than her, he, of course, was already a very, very interesting man, wasn't he, Lord Carnarvon V?
He was. He made a bit of a mull of his finances. So whilst he didn't marry for money, I think he followed an adage of Jane Austen that it might be unwise, it might be not wise to marry without money. Mm-hmm. So, and he certainly married an heiress, and one whose dowry was cash, £500,000, about £50 million in today's terms. Yeah. So it was huge, and she spent a fortune on the house, and he could spend his own fortune, which was not inconsiderable, with 5 estates and you know and quite a few assets and a house in Berkeley Square, on himself. Mm-hmm. So he was able to finance his excavations in Egypt, and she financed and had fun. And it is extraordinary the freedom that money gave her, but she paired her extraordinary legacy in terms of money with a vocation, which was nursing. So she gave so much of her fortune away to make other people better.
And as you say, that's why during World War I, she turned the castle into a hospital. But back to Lord Carnarvon V, He, of course, was the Carnarvon who funded the Tutankhamun dig. And there was a reason, I think, what made him first interested in Egyptology? Wasn't it something because he was injured because of his motor driving or something?
You're so amazing, Anna. You're completely right. He was actually fascinated by it. He was a great traveller and adventurer. You know, his grandfather was as well. So, you know, before he was 21, he'd sailed to South America. He'd sailed, you know, towards Australia. He sailed to Sri Lanka, Ceylon as it was. He was a great traveller. He liked to see things with his own eyes, and his father thought that was part of his education. So he wasn't particularly academic with his books, so he gave up Cambridge, and his father, you know, said go away and sail. So that's where he went. And he'd also gone to Egypt in 1898, and when he was then very badly injured in various car accidents, and the doctors said you can't stay in England in the winter months, and I think you and I might have been thrilled to have been told the same, he set off for Egypt. So he spent every winter in Egypt from 1906 until 1923, except for the First World War.
Yeah.
And when he was there, he took up a profession, he took up an occupation and became an archaeologist. So he was an archaeologist before he met Howard Carter. And again, he had the resources, you know, to carry out excavations, which of course Howard Carter did not have.
Absolutely. And that is, in the end, what made the discovery of, well, certainly the century, probably of all time, actually, today.
It was a great relationship, wasn't it? It was friendship. So it's back to friends again.
Yes, and just the most amazing story of the uncovering of Tutankhamun's tomb. And then, of course, so sadly, Lord Carnarvon died within weeks, I think, of discovery of the tomb, didn't he?
He did. I mean, they discovered it in November 1922, and then Lord Carnarvon came back to England for Christmas, and he went to see King George and Queen Mary, and he gave various talks, and he was trying to work out how to deal with this extraordinary discovery which had caught the world's imagination. So it had become the first global media event. He then returned to Egypt, and they had the grand opening with the Queen of the Belgians in February. And then sadly, he ended up cutting himself, famously nicking a mosquito bite with his when he was shaving. And he actually died out in Egypt on April the 6th, 1923. So he came back to Highclere in his coffin.
Isn't it said that at the moment he died, the dogs back at Highclere howled?
Well, his own dog, Susie, back at Highclere died at that moment.
When he died?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Do you know that for a fact? Is it a fact or is it a legend?
Well, she was living with the housekeeper, and apparently that was what was written down. So we think she buried with him on Beacon Hill.
And of course, all of that was because, as you say, it was a global media phenomenon. All of that became the Tutankhamun curse, and so it went on.
Well, I know, and it's been fun. So we've got our own Egyptian exhibition, which George and I created before Downton, because, you know, just to try to gather people to explore and find those wonderful things.
So when the 6th Earl of Carnarvon died in 1987, and my husband and his father were collecting everything together for the taxman and, you know, historic England people and things like that. And the butler, Robert Taylor, said to Geordie's pa, "Excuse me, my lord, what about the Egyptian treasures?" And Geordie's pa said, What Egyptian treasures? What do you mean? He said, "Yes, between these two doors." So between the drawing room door and the smoking room door is a very wide cavity, if you like.
Hugely wide.
And Geordie's grandfather never used it. He never used the drawing room, so he had just drink cabinets. No one had looked in there. And that is where earlier butlers, I assume, had put quite a lot of Egyptian treasures. But they'd actually been tucked away in so many corners around the castle. So there's a wonderful great big alabaster jar, which is found behind some flower pots down in the cellars. There's a little head of Amenophis III, Tutankhamun's grandfather, which is beautiful, which was found in a gun cupboard. I mean, it was extraordinary. They went on this treasure hunt.
And there were things sort of secreted all around the house.
There were.
Or just not so much secreted as just sort of forgotten and put in a corner.
They were. Well, the 6th Earl, The fifth Earl, the one who discovered Tutankhamun's tomb with Howard Carter, died in 1923 in Egypt. And his son wanted nothing more to do with Egypt, and his widow Almina catalogued the majority of the collection, and they were sold to pay inheritance tax. And that collection is the Metropolitan Museum of New York, so it's all gone there. And he just made a note at the bottom saying, I have left a few unimportant items at Highclere. Now the sixth Earl, the fifth Earl's son, was not in the least interested, so they were all just stuffed away, put to the back of cupboards, and then entirely forgotten about. And if you think about it, you went through the 20s, the 30s, the Depression, the Second World War, the recovery, there was enough going on, and it sort of passed from, with sort of memories in the distant past of some people who mentioned to some people that was it. But Robert Taylor had come to the house in 1937.
And Robert Taylor?
And he was the butler who told my pa-in-law, excuse me, my lord, there are some Egyptian treasures, because he only retired 50 years later in 1987 when the sixth Earl died. So in 1937 he was learning under the butler who'd been here when they were tucked away.
Isn't that incredible?
This is amazing.
And it's been a mammoth journey for you, that one, just sort of, I don't know, acknowledging the Egyptian past, also having to deal with the Egyptian authorities.
But I think it's, again, it's understanding, researching, considering, contemplating, reflecting, thinking about history. So that's what, I think history is so important.
You see, that brings me to the present day, because I was wondering about that. This wonderful Egyptian museum you've got, which tells the whole story, and you actually walk through it, so you experience the story. That's a very enclosed space. Are you able to reopen that to the public at the moment?
Well, yes, it's just a one-way tour. So effectively, you could, it's like, a supermarket's an enclosed space, or any other shop, you don't see the sky, so it's enclosed in that way, and everybody is just going to have a one-way tour. And we've got some markers, and we're just asking people just to respect other family groups. And I think, if you're shopping, whenever I go shopping, people skate round each other and grin at each other, and it works pretty well, actually. I think most people are more friendly.
Yeah, it's manageable if you think about it. So what sort of changes have you had to make to the usual Highclere? I know that you are absolutely determined. You're going to open on July the 12th.
Yeah.
Welcome the public back, because you need them and they want to see it. So what sort of changes have you had to make to the usual Highclere experience? How different is it going to be this time, this July the 12th, as opposed to last?
Well, I think, funnily enough, it's made us be more innovative and better. So we've got an entirely one-way tour going through the castle. And we did it, there's a sort of few of us who have lived together here, on the estate in the park, about 6 of us through the whole of lockdown. So they were my family guests, and I made them all start to go through the castle to figure out where our pinch points were. And then I put hangers along to try and work out how many people we could fit. Couldn't be bothered to open the shutters, we're going to have to shut them again. And then they were all going far too fast because they knew it all anyway. So we've come up with some fun facts, which are, who's walked down the staircase? Well, Disraeli has, Lord Salisbury has, Winston Churchill has, Lord Grantham has, and you have. So it's just some ways of
traveling. Most famous staircases in the world. It's a gorgeous staircase.
And then what's quite fun is we're taking people, instead of looking into Mercia bedroom, I've got a different Disney queuing system. So you go into the Mercia bedroom, which is where also Lord and Lady Grantham spend a lot of time in bed as well.
That's the big red one.
No, it's not. It's a very pretty one, the 4-poster.
Oh, right. Okay.
People go into that one, and then there's little facts about all the crew who were also, around them. And then you go out into Queen Caroline's room. So, and then you come back onto the gallery, and you go into the next. So we've got a lovely little snaky thingy-wingy as it goes on.
I've just been doing some furniture removal. So it's very unperfect. The rug is all rucked up, because I've realised that we can have a better one-way system if visitors, when we open in July, come into Mercia bedroom, which is also where Lord and Lady Grantham spend a little bit of time here in that bed, along with 40 or 50 of the film crew, and then they can exit in the door to the left into Queen Caroline's room. So I hope it's a bit of an added pleasure for visitors when they come from early July.
And actually, the dining room is my pièce de résistance, because you go round the back,
Round the
out
table.
the dining room, and then
Yeah.
you go round the table. And normally we used to go out the door we came in. But this time we've cleared the servery behind it, and we've created what looks like Mrs. Patmore and Daisy's kitchen. And guess who looks out? Mrs. Patmore and Daisy from a behind the scenes shot. I just think it's hysterical. I love it. I love it. It's far better than we had before. So
What,
people
they
will
sort
go
of-
out there.
they're not the real people, presumably, just standing there forever. They're cutouts, are they?
There are cutouts, but they are very. I think it's quite amusing, and I think it'll make people smile. I want people to have a really lovely experience,
Yeah.
a happy day out. We've got lots of takeaway food. We've got afternoon tea boxes with half a bottle of champagne and scones and cakes, so people can take them away. And we've got masses of tables and created different shelters for people to sit under. So probably more than we had before again.
Yes, it's interesting because when I visited you last week, it was a glorious, glorious sunny afternoon. And of course, you've got so much outdoor space as well. And even the wildflower meadow that you were showing me that you and your husband have planted, and it's gorgeous. You've mowed a sort of extra wide path through it so people can keep socially distanced while they just meander through it. It's lovely.
I woke up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my God, the path's not wide enough. So I sort of roared out to see Paul and said, wider, wider. And with some of the other paths, we just made them a little bit wider. But there's no, people can step off the paths and into the longer grass. But I think it's nice to meander. There's very few straight paths. And it's trying to just wonder what's round the corner.
But
That's
we
right.
put in this wildflower meadow probably about 7 or 8 years ago, and we harrowed the ground for maybe 2 seasons.
Yes, you have to prepare the ground, don't you?
Yes, to take away the grass, because otherwise the grass is what grows so strongly and the flowers aren't given a chance to go through it. So wildflowers always do well on bad ground because they've got nothing to compete with.
So the grass actually means that's the reason we don't have wildflower meadows everywhere.
Yes. And then, so we've prepared the grounds, and then we went and got a chalkland down wildflower meadow mix with a wonderful eccentric man called Bill who knew all about it, and put it in. And in the first few years, you get maybe too many oxeye daisies and not enough of this, or too many of that. And then now, we haven't. This year, it seems to have really come into its own, and the diversity. We've got pyramid orchids as well as the oxeye daisies, and we've actually got some bee orchids as well.
Did you actually buy the seeds?
Originally,
The seeds
we
everywhere?
with the farm actually, because we needed to do it in scale. We now collect the wildflower seeds and we sell them like a
Ah, clever.
So people around the world have got corners of Highclere.
But you can see
growing.
how well it's doing. The butterflies are already here.
I know.
Everywhere.
It's fabulous, fabulous grounds.
Well, it's fun. And we've also got some little cake boxes for slices of cake to take away. And I think actually, we'll keep, even if the pandemic went away, I think this is really fun. Some of what we've done. It would be nice to also offer those who wish to stay China cups, and we're into 100% takeaway cups at the moment. But it's fine actually, Anne. And we've got masses of plant pots and terracotta pots and little hazel hurdles, just to make people again feel comfortable. And I think that we all need to get out and find some people are much braver about going out than others.
Yes.
I think it's good to find some confidence, and I think it'll help people get mentally and physically stronger, I hope, coming to places such as Highclere and having a trip to look forward to. It's back to my thing about having a horizon.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you're creating one in a way. You're determinedly creating that horizon. You are opening on July the 12th, come what may. The only thing is, I suppose you won't get your international visitors, which you're so used to.
No, we won't. And we've transferred many of them to next year. Again, it's been a really tough few months since March the 23rd, and I've spent hours and hours of most days replying to emails, and James, one of my team, has helped me, but goodness me, it's been tough. But now the mood has changed, and we're trying to give people horizons, events suggestions of how to look forward to. If you don't want to bring your mother on the 14th of July, bring her on the 14th of September.
Yes. Yeah.
And just have something to look forward to. You
And
can't continually
absolutely
sit in a house. That's like being in prison.
Well, yes, and you sense, don't you, that confidence will build.
I hope so.
After your first day of opening and seeing a few people around, maybe a lot of people around, your confidence will build too.
It will, and I'm going to, luckily we've got a computer system, so I can just begin with sort of pre-booked tickets, so I can make better judgments rather than not know. So I like knowing. I'm a very boring accountant, Anne.
Yes, you are. And having the background of an accountant is probably a very wise thing for a future Lady Carnarvon, isn't it? Or a present Lady Carnarvon. Very, very important thing. What is your husband up to at the moment? Where is he? What's he doing?
Well, actually, Geordie's taken 2 days out to go and to go away with our son Eddie to stay with one of my sisters by the sea. So, which is a really good thing to do. We've just been here every single day since March the 23rd, and then I'm going to reverse and go and stay with her and bring Eddie back. So we needed a change, and I want to roll up my trousers and paddle in a very cold sea.
Yes, but that's probably the one thing you don't have at Highclere. But I mean, I imagine so many people probably look at you and think, gosh, having a castle all to yourself for all these months, you can wander around in your tiara all on your own. They must have an idea that it's such a luxury having a castle all to yourself. On the other hand, I've had these weird visions of you, with a hoovering all these bedrooms, thinking, oh no, another 114 to go.
Well, it's actually just too big. It's not fun. This house was meant for people, and if you go and get a cup of tea or coffee, it's going to take you 5 minutes to get there. So you think, do I really need it? And shall I bring back 2? So it's sort of different things. And I've got to take some things up to the top floor, and I've been putting it off because I know it's going to take me 10 minutes to drag it all up there, and then find somewhere to put everything I need, and then I'll come back down again. And do I really have to do it? It's actually, you end up prioritizing, I think, Anne.
Do you love it? Do you love the castle?
I do love the castle, and I think I love it because I love the people who live here today and the people who've lived here in the past. So it's not just about the stones, or the stones are an achievement of all of our ancestors, but it's about the people and the visible history, the fact you can touch it. And I think to my mind, history is very important. And to create something like this, you needed imagination and vision and determination. Then you needed to create the processes by which you built it. And I just think it's such a fun lesson to look at, but it's much more than a lesson.
And it goes on, doesn't it? It'll be, in the future, it'll be there, and you will be one of the Carnarvon countesses. And history, I suppose, will, say, well, she did this, she did that, she brought Downton Abbey to it for a start. How do you see? Do you have any visions about where it will be in a year's time, 5 years' time, 10 years' time? Do you think?
Yes,
about that?
I do think about that. I mean, I think it's quite good to think. At the moment, I'm thinking usually for the day, and then I'm thinking a little bit ahead, back to my horizons. Then I'm thinking about the next 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And I think that's such an important thought process to have, because if you can think of the steps you might need to take, it's I suppose, if you like, little stepping stones you're trying to balance on, going way out into the sea, and you can't always see them, but you know the rough direction you're trying to sail, and then it means you can react to what's going to hit you in the face that day, but you've got some of the important things sorted out. So I've got masses of lists. Sometimes the lists are very depressing because they seem endless lists, but at the moment I'm making lists. I
can imagine. But it will be a great day on July the 12th when you see people back.
Thank you. I guess it will be a lovely day. I'm going to be at VR, wondering who's going to turn up first, actually, at visitor reception.
Well, you'll be able to treat yourself to a nice tot of gin. How's the gin coming along?
Oh, thank you. Well, do you know, one of the first things we've built a little temporary, obviously, cocktail bar by the Healing Herb Garden, and it looks so amazing. So we've done that. It's all made out of wood from the estate. And so that's where everyone can come and have their Highclere Castle gin cocktail. We're going to have cocktails of the day. Louis is a brilliant mixologist, and he's such fun to watch and to talk to and to listen to. So, yeah, Highclere Castle gin, and we've got a lot of different things to share with people, I hope. Big day out.
How do you describe the gin? Is it? Does it have a bouquet of? What sort of gin is it?
It's delicious, gin, Anne. It's actually got 7 different gold awards. We've got some more in now, so I must give you a bottle. You have to come over and try it with me, perhaps. But you must obviously. I'd love you to try it. But it's very clean. The juniper is slightly pared back because that puts some people off. It's too strong, and then it's balanced with the citrus, with the lemon, and with the orange. It's got a touch of lavender, so it's inspired by the botanicals of Highclere, by the lime flowers, by the lavender. We've grown juniper on the foss of Beacon Hill. Well, it's grown for thousands of years. It's got a little bit of cardamom. And at the end, we were tasting gin for 9 months, and I'm so sorry you missed out on that part. Actually, you'd loved it. Sorry. So we tasted gin for 9 months, and at the end, there was just a taste at the end, and Geordie and the distillery came up with a brilliant idea, and they put just a few oats from the farm in it, and it gives us this creamy aftertaste. Oats.
Wow.
It's completely unique. So it's fantastic for a martini or for a Negroni. And if you just drink it on the rocks, it's got the most amazing taste. So it's been such a new journey again for me.
Yes.
And I've now completely got into cocktails and hanky panky and aviator and the bramble one which Louis made the other day, or the Clover Club. It's been amazing. But it's a great thing to learn, cocktails.
From Tutankhamun to gin, I mean, you couldn't have a better advert for saying to people there's something for everybody if you want to come to Highclere. If anyone's watching right now and they say, right, wow, yes, let's go to Highclere. It's opened now from July 12th. Do they have to book?
It's better to book at the moment because we're just trying to judge how many people we can welcome. So we're not full at all. We've just closed off the numbers, Anne, so that the people who are coming feel happy.
Yes.
And I'm just not quite sure what that number is at the moment. So at the moment, we're asking people to pre-book. If for any reason something, in these uncertain times, something happened, we'd obviously transfer them forwards. But I'm sort of feeling optimistic. We've got 100 acres of lawns and beautiful trees to walk under and admire. And, think about the cedar tree outside Highclere.
Yeah.
It was there when Napoleon was emperor. It was there, during Victorian times for Queen Victoria. It was there when George III was on the throne, or when Winston Churchill came to lunch. They're extraordinary trees, and I always find their gnarled barks, trunks extraordinary.
I know, if trees could tell a story, they would have lots and lots of stories to tell. Now, as you said, there's acres and acres of land there, and there's lots of room. So it's not as if anyone coming is going to have to be crammed up against anyone like they are in the Tube. I hope that July the 12th is a really successful day for you, and augurs well for the rest of and then there's Christmas at Highclere and everything. So you are planning, hopefully things will happen now and grow back to some sort of normality.
And actually, I've got a little history festival which I think I would like to go ahead with, both here in a small way and virtually, because we were going to celebrate VE Day, so I've sort of rolled it into Saturday, October the 10th, to think about VE Day and the aftermath and what our parents and grandparents went through, and just to give it a little bit of thought, to say thank you. I think I've got a marching band, which I presume will be allowed by then, and some planes in the sky. And then on the Sunday, I'm going to give it over to about the landscape of change, because I'm working with Chalk Valley History Festival, who also had to cancel, to bring that forward. And they're also trying to, see how we can do it. So they're in the Chalk Valley. We're on a chalk escarpment. And I just think I'd like to give a little bit of time again thinking, what changes do we need to do to give nature and our world a bit of a chance going forwards, rather than just the yatter? It's the actual processes. So back to being an accountant again, because it's the process of actually doing something.
Oh, and back to your lists. I mean, clearly that list is growing and growing, which is a good sign.
But then you do it.
It's a good sign. We're running out of time. It's probably best to say goodbye right now, but it's lovely to see you. And I hope everything is a real success for you, July the 12th onwards.
And it's always such a joy to talk to you.
I know, it's lovely to talk. It really is. Thank you so much for joining me. Best of luck and keep in touch.
Thank you, Anne. I will.
Good.
I'll get you some.
Yeah, lovely.